Jnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Shakshurumiritam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gaurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Reading from Vedanta Sutra, second chapter, first part, 11th verse or sutra. Tarka pratishtanat api anyatta anumeyam iti chetevam api anirmoksha prasanga. So there are sutras which are only one word or two, but this one is long. So it happened. But I'm not going to make a long translation, just the basic reasoning. Tarka has no solid ground. The consequence of all different methods which are only based on reasoning is that there is anirmoksha, non-deliverance, no liberation. Logic is not useful to understand the absolute truth, but it is useful to understand Siddhanta. And it is also useful to defeat Apa-Siddhanta. Why? Because most of this Apa-Siddhanta and others who are not even Vedic, like Buddhist or Jain or science, they don't accept Veda. So we cannot argue with the Veda, with Bhagavad Gita and other things. We have to use logic. So this is useful. It is not like it is not useful. But here, the Sutrakara, the one who has written the Sutra, Srila Vyasadeva, is explaining that it will not be able, you will not be able to understand the absolute Brahman through logic only. Pradhan, the unmanifested cosmos, is something that is inferred, that is logically deduced. But let's take a more modern example, one example that can really speak to us, the Big Bang Theory. What is the Big Bang Theory? It is based on a deduction. First, pratyaksha, observation, and deduction. How it happens, many people don't know how to explain this Big Bang Theory. Actually, in 1920s, I don't know the exact date, but there was someone who observes with a big telescope in California. This big, they see all the stars. And they were making picture of galaxies. Galaxy, they are supposed to contain billions of stars. And so, taking those pictures, he noticed that there was some red coloring around, on the rim of this galaxy. And according to the spectrum of light, something that is blue means something that is approaching us, and something that is red is something that is receding, going away. The same thing can be applied to sound. Sound changes when you have a siren. It goes very high and then it goes very slow, lower. Like this. So same thing with the color. On the spectrum you have the blue and then ultraviolets, and then on the other spectrum you have the red and then the infrared. And so this applied to objects in space, it means that those galaxies are going away from us. So the deduction is, if we go back in time, just like a movie, when you go back, you make the movie going backward, then everything is backward. People are walking on the other side and everything. So you going back in time means that the galaxy were much nearer, and then you go all the way to the primitive time. It was all condensed in a single atom, something very, very, very small. And according to the law of physics of gravitation, it was so much gravitation force that it like bang. So this idea of Big Bang comes from observation and a deduction. But if you know our god brother Sharaputa. He was working with NASA. And Srila Prabhupada, he appointed him along with other scientists, devotee scientists, to defeat the scientist. So he wrote this book, one book he wrote, in which he says actually, okay, this Big Bang Theory is based on that deduction of universe expansion based on the coloring of the galaxy. But then he asked a very interesting question. But what about if this red color was actually designating something else but speed? It could be something due to something else. Heat, for example. He doesn't give a different explanation, but he asked the question. And so therefore, induction or deduction in logic can always be defeated by another theory. This Big Bang Theory has been challenged actually by many people. It's just that it is not prominent on the scientific field. Most people accept the Big Bang Theory and the theory of evolution because there's no accepted theory that will go forward, that is accepted. So expert logicians can establish their proof with much effort, but this proof are contradicted by more expert logicians who establish newer conclusions. So it is endless. Like so many philosophy in the world, one is saying something, the other one is saying something opposite. If you think that you can find the absolute truth this way, here Vedavyasadeva is saying no. What is the ultimate truth? Those are questions that human beings is asking himself. What is the absolute truth? Is this world make sense or not? Who am I? What is the goal of my life? What is religion? What is Dharma? In the Srimad Bhagavatam we have this example of a bull. Is Dharma in the shape of a bull standing on one leg only. And Parikshit Maharaj comes and he sees a Shudra beating him. And he's asking the bull, why are you standing on one leg? And then he's guessing so many things, maybe because of this, maybe because of that. But the Dharma is answering, saying, actually, I don't know. Because I am confused about all this philosophy which are telling me what is Dharma. So therefore I'm standing on one leg. And nobody can explain. Some people are going to say that it is because there's this problem in this world. Some other person are going to say something different. Srila Prabhupada in his purport is writing about the Shat Darshana. See, Sankhya Yoga, Sankhya by Kapila Dev, the atheistic Kapila, he's saying everything comes from matter. And the soul is within matter, but it has nothing to do with matter, then there's no God. Just that you have to liberate the soul from matter and then everything is fine. Then yoga is a practical application. Patanjali is explaining how you can control your mind and become free from matter. Then you have Vaishisheka. Vaishisheka by the sage Kanada. He's explaining everything is a combination of atoms. He's one of the first thinker, also along with the Greeks or before the Greeks, thinker, Democritus, who said that everything can be boiled down, all matter can be, the ultimate matter is those little atoms which combine together and are indivisible. And then Nyaya, like sage Gautama, for example, is explaining that everything also depends on matter, but that you can understand the world, God and the Jiva, through logic. So they have this different philosophy. Then ultimately Mimamsa, the two Mimamsa, Karma Mimamsa by Jaimini Rishi, who says that the goal of life is to execute sacrifice so you can go to heaven. And when you come back on earth, then you should take birth as a Brahmana. So therefore you always enjoy, you have a good life on earth and in heaven. But you stay always in the material world. According to Karma Mimamsa, the world is eternal. It is not created, it is not destroyed, and you never are liberated from this world, really. You always stay in this world. but you stay in a good way. As a Brahmana, well, that is the goal, to stay as a Brahmana or as a god, not as a Shudra and low caste, of course, and going to hell. This is not very interesting. Then you have Vedavyasa, who is writing Vedanta, the final conclusion of all, and this is what we are studying. Today there are many more. There are actually offshoots of those different philosophies. Sankhya is giving rise to many philosophy of the same kind. This evolution theory is actually based on Sankhya, but people don't know. Materialism is very prominent in the West. Materialism means everything is matter. Everything is based on matter. Consciousness is actually a production of the brain, and everything is finished at death. There's nothing that survives death. Then you have different kinds of materialism. You can call spiritual materialism. Some of those ideology like Buddhist and the like, who say that actually there's something more than matter, but actually we don't know. We don't know what it is. Then you have also what I call material pantheism. Pantheism means everything is God. So material pantheism means, because it is material, Prakriti is God. Material nature is God. Like ecology, modern ecology. They are saying that actually there's nothing more than this world. We belong to nature. When we die, our atoms merge into the different atoms and we form something else. Nothing is lost. It's not like pure materialism where there's nothing, but there's something there, but our consciousness is destroyed. Then you have spiritual pantheism, like New Age philosophy, which is describing we are in constant evolution. There's no going down, and we have like going all the way up. And through positive thinking, we can change our future. The mind influences matter, influences our life. Those are different philosophy, which actually contain some interesting aspect, but they cannot approach the absolute truth. You have to understand the importance of pramana in order to establish a proper source of right knowledge, valid knowledge. Pramana means the source of valid knowledge. In philosophy, this is what you call epistemology, or the philosophy of knowledge. In other words, epistemology is not the definition only of a word, it's also the definition of knowledge. How do we know what we know? I said, I know this Big Bang Theory. How do we know? How do we know what we know, and how do we know it is true? This is the question. People don't even ask those questions. How do you know what you know? From where? And how do you know it is true? Because if you ask yourself those questions, maybe you will have different answer, and then you will think, but maybe it is not true. But people are not even asking those questions because they are afraid. Or if I ask myself too many questions, I'll go crazy. This is what they say. I'll become depressed. This is what they say. Unfortunately, Nyaya established 10 pramana. Jiva Goswami, he's giving them in his Tattva Sandarbha. I'm not going to read them all because actually they boil down to 3. Pratyaksha, sense perception. Anumana, not Hanuman, but Anumana, logic or deduction. And Shabda, which means the word, the scriptures. And Nyaya, of course, because it means logic, gives very much importance to reasoning. And it has this deduction, for example, when you're observing something, 5 branches of reasoning according to Nyaya. Just listen carefully. You have a proposition. There's fire on the mountain. Then there's a reason behind it, because there's smoke. Then there's observation. Everywhere there's smoke, there's fire. As in the kitchen, if there's big smoke, that means there's fire. Then you put the application of this knowledge. There is smoke on the mountain. Conclusion. Therefore, there is fire on the mountain. Maybe 5 branches is too much. We are more accustomed to Aristotle's logic, which has 3. This is called a syllogism. You have 2 propositions and a conclusion. You have a major one, a minor one, and a conclusion. So therefore, if I take the same example as fire and smoke, The first proposition is that all that has smoke has fire. Observation, there is smoke on the mountain. Conclusion, therefore, there is fire. This is what you call a syllogism or logic. But then there's an objection. Why? Suppose that the smoke on a mountain is not due to fire, but to some kind of a fog, mist, or some other explanation. We know that smoke is not only caused by fire. Therefore, your conclusion is not right. You see, this is why logic cannot be given too much credit. In a Mahabharata, it is said, Tarko pratishta shrutayo vibinato. Tarko pratishta, like in our sutra, nasa vriji yasyamatam nabinam. Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. Mahajano yanagata sapanta. That by logic you cannot understand the absolute truth. You have to follow the path of the Mahajan if you want to understand what is Dharma and the highest Dharma. That is the thing. Jiva Goswami is quoting those 4 defects that all human beings have. We are Brahma, delusion about who we are. I identify myself with the body. I think I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm black, I'm white. I'm delusion. But also, we are delusion when we think we are perceiving something, but it is not the right thing, like a mirage. Then pramada, the second defect. We make mistake. We say to err is human. When we are not really attentive, we make mistakes. Then vipralipsa. We have a propensity to cheat. Of course, if we make mistake and we don't understand what we see, then we have a propensity to cheat. And karanapatava, imperfect senses. Yeah, the first one and the fourth one is almost similar. That's why sometimes it is difficult to remember them all. But these are the defects of human beings. Imperfect senses, propensity to cheat, making mistake, and the fact that we are delusion. Our senses cannot perceive, like we were talking about X-rays and ultraviolet wavelengths and radio waves also. We cannot hear, we cannot see. So nyaya, that is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, our senses and everything, but nyaya also is limited. Yeah, there's no solid ground. Of course, we need our senses to read Shastra, to hear the instruction, to do seva, and we need logic in order to understand things and how to act. Srila Prabhupada, he was saying, try to use common sense, and if you have none, try to follow those who have. Try to get inspired by those who have. Simple. And the conclusion is that the Veda have to be learned from a bona fide spiritual master who is well versed in the scriptures and who belong to a bona fide disciplic succession of an orthodox tradition. This is how we can learn how Brahman, Janmadiyasya Yataha, because everything is trying to prove how Brahman is the cause of the world and not all this different other philosophy. And through this media, Shabda, but Shabda learned from bona fide guru belonging to an authentic disciplic succession, then we can know the absolute truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This is the meaning. Panchakalpa tarubhyacha kripa sindhu bhyaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.